Hi, everyone. Welcome to BuffConf. Honored and excited to be here. My name is Mayur Srinivasan. A little bit about myself. I basically head up the digital video platform team at Fox. We're responsible as a platform group for all of the end-to-end video delivery workflows, though, both live and video on-demand content, from acquisition to encode to delivery over a multi-seeded network to all of the player frameworks that go across into our clients. Responsible for delivering content across various business units at Fox, sports, entertainment, news, and business. So it's a little bit about myself. My talk today is about Super Bowl and how we were able to pull off those numbers that Lionel and others talked about, and how we were able to deliver it at low latency and at very high quality, though, right? So let's get into it. So we were able to, on Feb 9th, deliver Super Bowl 59. Tubi was the front door client application. They were using our video platform stack. And we were able to deliver it to 24 million unique viewers. We peaked at about 15.5 million peak concurrence. And we were able to kind of do all of this for the very first time. So on some platforms like I think iOS, we were able to beat OTA broadcast latency, though. So we were like a second under, though, right? I think these were some numbers published by Dan Rabin while he was doing his streaming blog on the day off. He was measuring the performance of our ecosystem against various other things. And from a latency perspective, I think he noticed that on iOS, we were like 1 second behind broadcast latency. Now, how do we define broadcast latency? Typically, broadcast latency is defined as glass-to-glass latency from field to, say, if you're like watching over broadcast antenna, right? It's typically 8 seconds delayed if you kind of count the time from glass, like from field action to when you get it over broadcast. So we were kind of able to deliver on certain platforms at around 1 second, though. Yeah, so really good stuff there. This was our third Super Bowl. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. A lot of us have collaborated over the years and helped build the architecture that I'm going to get into and kind of explain how we were able to pull off these numbers at scale with good quality. Our very first Super Bowl was way back in 2020. First time ever we were doing Super Bowl. We didn't even have a multi-seeding strategy a year before that, and we kind of started building on all of that. Our peak concurrence were about 3.4 million peak concurrence for that Super Bowl. Then we kind of built upon it, learned from the community, interacted, and like back in 23, we did about 7 million peak concurrence. And then with this one, we peaked at about 15.5 million peak concurrence. I think more than the numbers, I think the challenging aspect of this Super Bowl was the sheer terabits being streamed, though. We've done Super Bowl at 4K across all these three Super Bowls, but the 4K audience has, as you guys all know, like it's grown like crazy, right? I remember like CDN capacity peaking at about 15 terabits way back in 2020. With 23, it was around 41 terabits. And with this one, with our 4K audience being over the roof, it ended up peaking at around 135 terabits. So it certainly gave me a heart attack during that event. So it was crazy numbers there. We kept raising the bar even on QoE and performance, rebuffering rates, kind of trying to keep reducing it overall through our observability. Startup times also kept improving. And as I was saying, 4K viewership numbers kind of grew, though, right? 14% way back in 2020 to all the way to 28%, though. Yep. So lots of good press. Everyone was talking about the Super Bowl and how it went well. Chibi received a lot of good press around all of this. For me personally, it was more about like not being yelled at and things not working. It's an extremely stressful day. If those of you who've been in like large scale event streaming, doing operational stuff, I think operational excellence is a key thing that I'm going to touch upon and talk through. But for me, it was more about like, did people get a great experience, right? Like, less noise about like any issues, or if people said, hey, it worked pretty well, right? Like if you ask your friends, say, hey, did you watch the Super Bowl? How was it? How was the experience? It just worked, yeah, had no issues. It's a great answer. Like nothing, you don't need much praise on any of this. All you're looking for is like, did it work? Did it meet your expectations, right? So it's great. So I'll talk a little bit about our journey. Typically, planning for Super Bowl events like this starts the year before at NAB. April of last year is when I started the first set of planning discussions, talked to our CDN vendors, started getting our capacity reservations going early, right? And then we thought, okay, it's going to be yet another Super Bowl. We've done 2 Super Bowls before this. It should be pretty straightforward. Then we had a surprise saying, it's not going to be Fox Sports, but Tubi is going to be doing the Super Bowl, brand new client integrations. Everything's going to be new. So that is the first curveball thrown at us. So Fox has this weird way of like starting to name projects after sea creatures. So we started this project called Sea Lion back in June. And that's when we started engaging with the Tubi client teams and figuring out, hey, what are some of the challenges that we need to talk through and kind of get Tubi, because Tubi had never done an event this large of scale, especially live streaming. So we basically had to start working with their client teams and their backend APIs. The whole business context here was Fox wanted Tubi to stream the Super Bowl because we wanted to get more eyeballs onto the Tubi platform, get a lot more registrations going into the ecosystem. We've in the past just like left Super Bowl ungated and have like it's pretty much everyone has access to it. But with this one, what we wanted was to get like a lot more registrations going to Tubi's ecosystem. So that was the big challenge, like kind of scaling up their APIs and making sure they're able to handle any peak issues during Super Bowl, right? Yeah. So just talking through some of the challenges, we basically had to start brand new integrations across all of the client teams. They had about 29 different connected client integrations that we had to do. So basically my player engineering teams ended up working with their client engineers and started this process of integrating our player stack against their client applications. We were basically educating the Tubi backend engineering teams and trying to get them to understand how to develop like a multi-CDN strategy, not just for large objects, which we were handling, but also like for small object delivery. You need to have a robust multi-CDN delivery architecture for scaling up your backend APIs, though, right? We basically helped them scale up their backend registration APIs and other services behind the scenes, which powered the experience, right? And worked very closely with them. But I think the key point I wanted to chat about is the operational excellence. I mean, we've gone through a couple of Super Bowls, but since they were new, I think it's extremely critical whenever you're working with other teams to just collectively work with them and be patient and like help drive up that operational excellence. And I'll talk about a bunch of dress rehearsals and all that stuff we did to kind of help get everyone on board, right? Yeah, so I mean, typical way of working backwards, we know Feb 9th is not going to change from a date perspective. So we came to know about this way back in June. So we started working on chartering a course backwards, right? We said, hey, let's start doing all of our integrations and be kind of at a good state by October. So we started like this 3-month integration process wherein their clients integrated with our player stack, tested streams, and we're kind of in a state wherein like the base like integrations were all done so that we could start doing some real world production testing though, right? Critical part to think about is like try to test as early as possible with the day off infrastructure, right? So that's where we started pretty early in this process. Way back in October, we had our first dress rehearsal. Very few numbers, like we hardly got like 3,000 users. We kind of started slow. Just wanted to start doing all of the functional testing, making sure across all of those 29 different platforms, things were working as expected. And we try to mimic the day off experience as much as possible, right? And then we worked through rehearsals, bug fixes, iterative stuff, all the way through to December. Wanted to at least have like a good Christmas break, not get bogged down by stuff. So we were aiming for was that, like a bunch of testing, load testing, chaos testing, all of the standard practices that you'd want to do to handle an event that scale, right? And then January is pretty much like final prep though. We even approached our business units, tried to figure out what's the largest real world event that we could do. And we found an event sometime in January to kind of, I think it was the inauguration or something like that. And we ended up trying to get as much as possible in terms of an audience scale, and we took what we could, right? So that was good. Did a lot of prep, even leading up to the day of Super Bowl. We spent like a week in our broadcast facility, kind of getting all of the operational folks who are going to be involved on the day off, like kind of building that muscle memory into people, right? Like, I mean, we had all of these great run books and all of that, but when you're doing live streaming, you don't have much time to react. You got to take decisions in like seconds, under 5 seconds kind of thing, right? So like it's important for people to have that muscle memory built, and then like we kept timing ourselves, like making sure like, hey, because similar to all of these failure scenarios, and like let's see if we can react quickly and fix systems, though, right? Yeah, so I'll talk about the tech. That's probably the most interesting part for all of folks on this call here. Basically, we have a world-class broadcast facility in Tempe. That's where signal origination happened. The workflow is must be familiar to a lot of folks who've collaborated over the years. We're a heavy AWS pipeline. So the way it worked was we had dual redundancy with our contribution feeds, one in Tempe and the other one is backup in Pico in LA. We had like our net rooms, our primary was through Tempe, wherein the signal net rooms, all of that, the primary encoding happened in our broadcast facility in Tempe. We had our contribution encoders with like redundant backup encoders in there. And then Pico had like the similar setup there though. And we had like the ability to fail over if Tempe took a hit for some reason. We had the ability to kind of fail over to Pico from a backup perspective. We were carrying 3 feeds that day. There was a 4K feed, there was a regular 1080p feed of the Super Bowl feed, and then we were also doing deportes. So 3 feeds kind of following the same exact architecture through the workflows though. And then all of our distribution encoding was in the cloud. We used AWS services, AWS Media Live for our distribution encoding. We used a very simple origin, AWS's Media Store product. Can't emphasize enough the importance of origin and like making sure you keep it simple and geo-redundant. We weren't manipulating anybody, it's making sure it's kept as simple as possible, right? Origin is sacred. You gotta protect it. So we had like a origin shield product in front of it. We used Fastly's origin shield. And then as backup, we also had CloudFront as a backup shield. And then multi-CDN, we used 4 CDNs, the standard ones out there, Fastly, Akamai, CloudFront, and we did a brand new integration with Quilt. And then player SDKs across the 4 verticals, Roku, Android, Apple, and web. Those were the 29 devices. And then all of this was powered by video backend APIs to kind of handle, like when a user hits watch, how do you resolve users to a playable URL? I think the key thing to point out here is we kept a lot of our ecosystem very static, like listings, images, artwork, all of that heavily cached. All of the small object APIs were heavily cached. Pretty much the only dynamic decisions we were doing was putting end users into the right recommended or best possible CDN and protecting our URLs with tokenization. Those were pretty much like on a per session basis, pretty much the only dynamic decisions. Everything else was heavily cached and scaled up to kind of manage the day of infrastructure, right? So that's essentially our architecture there. I've got some diamond bullets on the workflow that kind of highlights some of the areas we spend a lot of time to help with the latency optimizations. I think where we spent a lot of time this time around was like at the contribution encoders. Like first of all, at the networking layer, like made sure like there are less hops to reduce latency. Second one is on the contribution encoders. We made sure like the contribution encoders were also optimized in terms of like settings to make sure like we're delivering as low latent a stream as possible. Third one is in the distribution encoders, similar approach, buffer settings, all of that stuff to make sure you're delivering the lowest latency stream at the highest possible quality. And then talking about player SDKs, did a bunch of optimization, startup stuff, making sure we're able to reduce startup speed. And the last part is in the video APIs, like scaling the APIs, making sure they're pretty responsive and all of that stuff though. Yep. Yeah, probably one of the most, I wanted to share this with folks here in the audience. I think the top 10 engineering investments for us were what we did was like our regular day-to-day operations, we kind of pared it down to what we call a Super Bowl mode, like as I talked about before, basically heavily caching the entire ecosystem and creating this experience for Tubi called like the Super Bowl mode, where users, when they launch the app, they just put it bang in the center of the Super Bowl stream, and they just hit one click away and they're in the stream, right? So that was first investment. Second one, when we've learned from the industry, I think one of the improvements we made compared to past Super Bowls was we kind of built upon our multi-CDN decisioning strategy. We were able to kind of fine-grain control which parts of the CDN get recommended. Like we were able to kind of balance out CDN routing decisions at a more, like at an ASN level. So that helped us quite a bit for this Super Bowl though. The key point to point out is at Fox, broadcast and digital is kind of treated as one, and that really helps a lot, and especially in terms of driving that operational excellence. It's one main group kind of handling everything from broadcast to digital to like end playback also, which helped us quite a bit though. We worked quite a bit with the Tubi folks on the pre, post, and game experience, kind of paring it down, keeping it as simple as possible. As I talked about, like CDN redundancy was large. We made sure we had like a multi-CDN strategy for our API tier also, and also for the large object, the video delivery though. We had a bunch of knobs for disaster recovery. Each and every part of the workflow that I talked about previously had like a backup with like knobs in place to quickly switch over to backup systems if any part of the ecosystem failed. Heavy amounts of observability all over. Key partners in all of this. We worked with the Momentum folks and building like a dashboard. I'll kind of talk about that. That helped like really a lot because we were able to pretty much with like a 5-second latency kind of see the trends of traffic. We were getting player beacons kind of fed directly into this dashboarding ecosystem, which helped us gain like really good observability though. We also worked with like a new logging system for like CDN observability. We worked with hydraulics this time around, and we were able to get like great observability into our CDN logs, like looking at like error rates, 4xx, 5xx errors, and kind of like looking at CDN throughput capacity. Like if a particular CDN in a particular area was like peaking out, we were able to kind of quickly get observability into that and kind of do dynamic CDN routing decisions if needed be though. So a lot of emphasis on observability and operational excellence this time around. So that was the analytics instrumentation. Key part to call out is like if you have like projections on your audience peaks for large scale events, kind of bump it up by 50x and do the math on your minimum requests per second SLAs though. We were kind of projecting 12 million peak audience, and we actually blew past it. And that's where we kind of said, okay, if you do the math, it's like 200K requests per second, right? So let's test all of our APIs. Minimal SLA is like 200K requests per second. But let's go even beyond that and have, like I think we went all the way up to like 500K requests per second and made sure like our APIs were well tested, battle tested throughout. And we also, while we were doing these scaling tests, we were like exercising our knobs, because a key part to think about is like thundering herd scenarios. Like what happens if a system fails? All of your users are going to start thundering herd too and hit your backup systems. So we tested all of these failover scenarios during a load test also at these high requests per second. So it's very important to think about that. As we've talked about, we massively scaled up. We had all of our resiliency switches, and we're basically resilient by default across our entire ecosystem. On the day off, pretty much a very early start. I have a couple of folks from my group, a bunch of folks are here. We're also in our war rooms. So we started at like 5:30 in the morning, went all the way up to like 8 p.m. Long day for us. And it was interesting. We did all of our prep work, pre-scaling, all of that stuff. We were ready. And we started seeing like crazy numbers even way before the game or the pre-game started. We hit our 2020 Super Bowl peak numbers like way before, even in like at around 2 p.m. Pacific, right? And that's when we started knowing, this is going to be an interesting day for us. It's going to probably exceed our expectations from a concurrency perspective. It was interesting. The 20 minutes before kickoff and the 20 minutes after kickoff, massive scale. Like I just kept seeing like every minute, like, a million users kind of kept on hitting the platform and joining the platform, right? Like, and we hit our second peak, like our second Super Bowl numbers, like 20 minutes before kickoff, and like 20 minutes after, we were like 10 million, and then just kept climbing. Numbers kept climbing, and it was a blowout game and a one-sided game, but still, like, till the half, just I think during the mid-game show, we peaked at about 15.5, and then the game kind of plateaued out, so people kind of stayed steady, and then at the very end, people dropped off, right? So this is our chart. This again was powered by Momento. This was very, very critical for us. Thanks to Quadrant team for all the support there. But yeah, it was an interesting tool. I mean, what we decided was, like, instead of doing multiple hops for our QA metrics, we'll just fire player beacons from each of the client devices into this gateway, and then Momento could help kind of aggregate those beacons and present, like, real-time concurrency dashboarding, right? So it helped us a lot, though. Yeah, as I talked about, like, this is like my top 5 senses heightened moments, I would call it, right, for the day off. I think way before I kind of talked through all of these, basically, I think what I'd want to call out is, like, as I start getting towards that 14, 15 million peak concurrence, pretty much a bunch of areas and multiple CDNs were running hot, so I had to kind of take some real-time dynamic decisions to kind of route traffic around. So the key takeaway for us was, like, you have to be nimble and on it, and, like, kind of keep close eye on metrics and observability, and all of the hard work we'd put in working with all of the folks, vendors and teams across the board helped us quite a bit in terms of like reacting quickly and helping to sustain the audience. Yeah, and then last key thing is like just kind of few key takeaways. Things to stress on if you're doing large-scale live events, live streaming, right? Simplicity, I can't stress this enough. We've kind of always had this philosophy of, like, let's like keep our video workflows simple, build backups, but don't overcomplicate systems. Like if you have 3 video streams, like a 1080p, 4K, and Deporte Street, like try to keep your architecture simple. Don't complicate it by multiple flavors of things and stuff like that, right? We ran, our origins were hot and west and east regions, kept it very simple, like sync locked, all of that stuff. So if there was any case, like when west region had an outage, we could easily flip traffic over to east and stuff, right? Disable all bells and whistles, like your regular 24/7 workflows probably have a lot of bells and whistles around DAI and retry logic and all of that stuff. We simplified a lot of that. Like we didn't want if there's an issue, like if you have retry in your ecosystem, that ends up like bringing down systems. So keep your logic simple. Heavily cache, avoid dynamic decisions, right? Use multi-CDN strategy for all of that. And then be bold. I mean, like, you might face a lot of pushback saying, hey, we can't test in production systems, or we can't really like simulate scale during actual production traffic leading up into the day off. But keep pushing on folks and like try to get as much production testing on day off infrastructure though, right? And then the last thing which I've talked about previously, time yourself, like on all of these disaster modes, how fast, like your key people in the war rooms and stuff, how quickly can they react and respond to things though. Yeah. This is a picture from our war room. Great audience. We literally have had the same exact war room seating. Some of the folks were even in their same exact seats from the previous Super Bowl. So it's very, very interesting. So kind of nailed it down to like a science kind of thing at this point. So yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I mean, the audience in this here, like we've collaborated. I see a lot of familiar faces I've worked with in the past, exchanged ideas. And I mean, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, because this wouldn't have been possible without all of the collaboration and the great work across the video community, though. So thank you very much.